Good morning, and welcome to today's session, Unlocking Your Organization's Potential, Generative AI for Your Business. My name is Kelly Negron, and I am a marketing manager here at MicroStrategies. We are so excited to be hosting this conversation today with IBM. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items we need to go over. We will be recording today's session. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box and we will address them at the end of our session. If for some reason we're unable to get to your question, a member of our team will reach out to you after the event. All attendees will be receiving a $25 gift card to Panera for lunch. Those will be coming through the emails you used to register shortly. Please take note that the codes to order will expire at midnight tomorrow night. We have some disclaimers we need to share with you as we are talking about an emerging space. Please note that there will be things discussed that are forward-looking, so please take note of those disclaimers displayed on the screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce your panelists for today's conversation, Juan Nunez and Emily Placet. Juan is the Director of Data and Analytics here at MicroStrategies, and Emily is a data scientist at IBM. Juan, I am now going to go ahead and turn things over to you to kick off today's session.
Thank you, Kelly, and welcome everyone. Welcome, Emily. We have a very exciting conversation today. We're very excited about it, I think we have about 45 minutes where we'll go through a number of items. So today we'll talk about artificial intelligence, AI, as a strategic enabler, and we're going to not just talk about broad concepts, but our goal in our conversation is to really get to real-world applications for generative AI, to get the creative juices flowing. And then dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah, thanks, Juan, for kicking us off. So after we talk about some real-world applications, so that we can show all of you what it would look like in something like your company, we created an example use case and demo around a fictitious company, which Juan and I will walk through the whole backstory and show you later. And then once we kind of walk through what it would look like within your organization, we'll kind of come back and talk about some considerations that need to happen kind of before you start implementing generative AI. And not only that, but kind of how to scale generative AI within your company in a safe and trusted way. And then kind of wrap it up with some next steps and how we would get started together.
Terrific. Now, to kick us off, though, I was thinking about our conversation today, and there's no argument on how present generative AI has been in the conversation for the past year. And I was thinking about the adoption, right? So there's the consumer side where there's so much and such a rapid adoption of generative AI, which is wonderful to see. And it got me thinking about Facebook. Facebook, it took them 4 years to get to 100 million users. And I was surprised to see that ChatGPT took just 3 months to get to that number. But as we start to think about all of these capabilities, right? So it's not simply a tool set, it's like tool sets upon tool sets upon tool sets. One of the things that come to mind is how do we leverage these capabilities to create sustainable business models? When the iPhone was introduced, this is back in 2007, I believe, somebody came up with a really useful app, which basically turned on the LED on this new device that was just launched. It was really useful, but very shortly after, that was included within the software shipped with the product. So that wasn't a sustainable business model. So I think it's important to take examples like that, and as we think about generative AI and how we as businesses engage with generative AI, there are things that make us different, and those things have to do with our intellectual property, our understanding of the context of our own business, what you as a business bring to the table that no one else can replicate. And those are things that are the recipe for creating these sustainable business models, which should be part of our thought process. But there are general capabilities and some examples that we're seeing out there, Emily.
Yeah, definitely. So I agree. The customization is definitely key when it coming to your own proprietary models, whichever you own. But these are a list of a roadmap of kind of what I've been seeing a lot of clients coming to me with when they want to start off on their journey. Today, I'm going to highlight two, the customer care and employee productivity, because personally, I've been seeing that the most. And I think it's pretty applicable across a wide range of clients. So when it comes to customer care now, it's not really as much of a priority as much of it's really just a must nowadays. Your clients really expect you to deliver faster, more personalized. It's no longer an if, but you really have to have this incorporated. And we've been seeing this across every industry, more or less. And it really has been taking up a lot of time of different employees having to either manually answer these calls or losing customers because they can't find the answer quick enough on your website and going to a competitor instead. So we've been using generative AI with a lot of our new clients in kind of just taking care of this and automating this for them. And we've been able to have a rough estimate of a 95% accuracy for almost all of our clients who have been adopting this customer care solution. Again, to what Juan was saying, of course, you completely customize it based off your business needs and what your customers are needing. But we've been seeing it's a really important one for starting off on this journey because it's something you want to scale as you scale your business itself, and you have to make sure you have that accuracy in place. Another big one is this employee productivity. We really feel like AI should just be making it your jobs better for your employees, not replacing your employees, but really taking away those menial tasks that eat away at. I'm sure all of us have the certain hours of our day where we have to either draft emails or just read some documents. So we're really focusing on those sort of tasks so we can get back to giving your employees more time face to face with your customers. So we've been trying to reduce a lot of those menial tasks for our clients. We've reduced up to 90% of the work for most of our clients involving like text reading and analysis. So whether that's reading through a bunch of documents and pulling out details and putting that in other forms, just some of the day-to-day tasks that make it a little like mundane for your employees or kind of steal their time a little bit from the main part of your business. But as you can see, there's almost every industry, every use case when it comes to all of this.
Yeah, so Emily, when you think about these use cases, right, so we're talking about organizations have that special sauce that is just particular to them, but we're also talking about these generalized use cases. How much of a general use case is already ready to be able to consume? How much of a lift does it represent to be able to start going down one of these paths?
It's not a huge lift. It really kind of depends on how much customization you want in place. For something like this employee productivity example, where you just kind of read documents and extract important details, that's really kind of ready, signed and sealed kind of copy paste for clients. But if they have, let's say, like certain things to interpret in their sentences, or maybe it's not word for word text, or they just have a different conversational tone. Let's say like I've been doing some work with some tutoring companies and I've been doing some work with some banking companies, and those are totally different forms of conversational tones. So it really kind of just depends how much you want to change it. But we have a lot of baselines just ready to kind of start consuming and start adding on to based off your own needs.
Yeah, and so I know we're going to dive a little bit deeper into a use case, but one of the things that we want everybody to think about, because this is really about the limit is your imagination and how it would apply in your business. So as you're looking at these things, it is not just for a specific use case, but is actually a basis, a baseline for us to be able to then bring our own knowledge, our own context, and be able to deploy these use cases. Now, before we jump into, or as we jump into our demo, I was promised a live demo, Emily. So before we jump into the demo, we want to sort of set this stage with two people that are doing work and how that looks like today, how they go through that activity today. So then we can see the demo and see if generative AI is able to help them at all.
Yeah, definitely. So why don't we go ahead and kick it off? So we'll start with two different user personas today. We'll start with Jim, who's a store manager at ABC Foods. And Jim's main focus is just having oversight over all of the products, the employees. He has his store, he's in charge of that. But ABC Foods has a bunch of different locations. So it's a large corporation, but he's in charge of his one store. And recently he's been having a lot of complaints with a specific product, which is this lemon green salad. He knows the supplier, and he's just been having a lot of customers come back to him really unhappy, either wanting to return it. There's been some quality issues. And Jim doesn't know how to fix this issue because he's not part of the procurement team. He just kind of oversees everything in his store. And his customers are now unhappy that this product that they've been buying from this store that they have been a customer at for a while is just not to their standards. And Jim's been trying to get in contact with the procurement team, but they're in a different time zone. They're busy. We all know how the days kind of get away from us. So it's been really difficult for him trying to reach out to our new character, Sheila, who is the procurement manager. So right now, Jim's kind of doesn't know what to do in this meantime. The company's losing my money by purchasing this salad. The employees and the customers are getting a little upset because there's really no resolution right now. And it's just kind of a waiting process as things happen. When something goes wrong, it never really is as instant as we hope it would be.
Yeah, you mentioned that the store has multiple locations. I see poor Sheila is drinking coffee by the gallon over there. So Sheila doesn't just take care of Jim. She works in procurement for the particular area. So she's taking care of many store locations, perhaps many issues this way that are coming to her desk.
Definitely. And I mean, we all know how it's been too. Some teams are understaffed recently, and Sheila's been taking the burden of a lot of that. And she really has been trying to address Jim's problem, but just is again in a different time zone, barely has enough time for her own meetings. So adding any more to the plate's a little bit hard for her. Not to mention everything that must happen when trying to change this new supplier once she does get in contact with Jim. And this is a lot of different several factors. If any of you are kind of in procurement or familiar with it, you would be aware of this. So when she's looking for a new supplier, A, she has to have Jim come address her, and B, she has to identify some new suppliers, do a cost benefit analysis of really changing this supplier. How much money are they losing from customers with the salad? How long has the relationship been with the supplier? Is this a one-off instance? Is this something that's repeated? There's a lot of different things. She has to use a lot of different platforms. And then go ahead, once she determines that the supplier may not be wanting to continue with the company, it doesn't fit their business needs or values, they're losing money and customers based off it, to go ahead and find a new supplier is a whole new challenge that's within Jim's zip code, will be able to deliver on time, meets their business goals. For Sheila, their company has really been trying to diversify their different suppliers. So she has to take into account all of that, get it approved by her executives, make sure there's not a lot of risk. So again, just like a lot of work for Sheila to be able to go ahead and change that.
So theoretically, she'd be going to multiple systems like vendor management system to look at the supplier profiles. She has to look at the history of interactions with this particular supplier. looking at new suppliers, trying to figure out like demand and supply capabilities, locations, where Jim is and what his needs are. So she's going through all these systems, gathering data and spreadsheets and papers and files and going through all of that. So a lot of the work happens in Sheila's own head in a way, right?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of it's also some math going into the different risks and all of that, but a lot of it is in her own head, and it's kind of her own industry knowledge as well, which is something that would be a shame if Sheila had to move to another company. That's a lot of work that Sheila has within her own experience that, let's say, if I tried to join this company, I would have no clue how to do all of that right now. So it's a lot of expertise and work. So it's a very manual process for Sheila right now.
Okay. So, so assume we throw in generative AI in the mix. What does that look like?
Well, we can go ahead and jump into the demo a little bit. And in this demonstration, I'll first kind of walk us through what Jim's life would look like with generative AI. And then we'll kind of move into what Sheila's life would look like with generative AI. So let me go ahead and pull up that demo for us. Okay, can you see my screen okay, Juan?
Yep, we're good.
Perfect. So what we have right here is just a mock-up of Jim's normal user interface within his company. This is where he normally logs into for work when he has to go ahead and schedule some meetings with Sheila or whatever company interface they use. And throughout this demonstration, just to remind everyone listening right now to think about your own company and kind of how this would be incorporated into your company. So right now for Jim's company, they have it through a chatbot, but there's a lot of different other solutions. So rather than Jim having to schedule some meetings with Sheila or talk to Sheila, he can go ahead and just start interacting with this procurement chatbot. So there's a few different options immediately. And again, this is all customized based off their company. So Jim's having an issue with this lemon green salad product. So he's able to kind of just click on product and he asks for the SKU number. And instantly with providing this, he's able to find the supplier, the average rating from the supplier based off their company's needs, when the contract's ending. So Jim doesn't have to go ahead and look up, is this a long-term supplier? We had a long relationship with them. Is it a one-off thing? So let's say if they had an average rating of 5 of 5, this might just be something's wrong. Let's call them, see what's up. But since they have a 2.3 rating and it ends in 30 days, it's not a diverse supplier. Jim can already tell this isn't, we're going to go ahead and change request. So he's able to just go ahead and click that button and submit a supplier change request. So rather than having to deal with these weeks of not being able to get in touch or however long it takes, he's able to just go ahead and submit a request on his end. And Jim's done his due diligence. He's been the best manager he could be for the store as soon as possible. And that's really about all for Jim's side. Does that make sense, Juan?
Yeah, so it cut his trying to get Sheila issue or putting in some system. It's doing it all for him. I'm interested to see what happens on the other side.
Yeah, okay, so let's move over to Sheila's dashboard. So this is now Sheila's account, same kind of interface since they work for the same company. I'm sure in other areas it might look a little bit different, but this is just kind of where Sheila's going to go to interact with the similar chatbot. So she can go ahead and start off this introduction. And right away, you can see she has a supplier change request pending. So it says, do you want to address this first? So first top of mind, she logs in. She doesn't have to check her email. It's just these are all in one place. So it won't get lost in anything. So for today's purpose, we'll go ahead and address that first. But in realistic, there might be other things she needs to address. And right away, she can see the exact store that it's coming from, the zip code, who requested it, what the employee's name was, the product, the supplier, the average rating again, which is all stuff she would probably have to manually go look up, maybe from a bunch of different data sources. If you're have a great kind of data platform already, maybe she just has to go to a different place, but still a lot of time kind of coming up with all of this, as well as the average rating in the background. Their company with this generative AI was able to kind of take all of those factors we were talking about earlier, such as customer satisfaction, pricing, timing, and how often they pay on time, how often they deliver it on time, and kind of create a rating for each of these stores. So Sheila doesn't have to look that up. She sees right away 2.3. And for their company, they really like to have that above a 3. They don't really like to fall below a 3. So when she sees this, she knows that it's ready to kind of change suppliers. She agrees with Jim. And this would be about the time where she'd have to go start all of her research and do a cost benefit analysis. But instead, she's able to click change supplier, and right away, the generative AI chatbot says, just describe your ideal supplier for me. And like I mentioned earlier, Sheila's executives wanted her to diversify their suppliers a little bit. And when she told them of this change that Jim had submitted, they said, great, we need some more women-owned suppliers within our portfolio. So if you could find that for the next few suppliers, that would be great. So now that would be a whole additional line of work to make sure she only looks at women-owned suppliers. But right now, Sheila's just going to ask the chatbot, and she's going to say, let's find a women-owned supplier for lemon green salad within Jim's zip code with a risk score less than 3. Rather than doing all of this manual process for weeks, it's able to kind of search through all of this information. Now, this may be data that the company has shared and put into this chatbot. This may be data that is publicly from these companies that are shared. It really kind of just depends on Sheila and Jim's company, ABC Foods, how they want to train this, who they want to include in this information. But you can see that there's immediately 3 different supplier options for Sheila to go through. And you can even see the middle one's been pre-approved. So this might be another thing that Sheila Company has implemented on the back end as well, that this chatbot's taking care of us for it. So pre-approved might be that they meet all of their requirements already. They have a relationship. Maybe they have other products going on. But for today's sake, we'll go ahead and send out a request to all 3 of these suppliers, just so Sheila can see the difference in all of them. And once we are able to click on that, it's able to go ahead and generate an email for us right away, requesting this lemon green salad with a certain quantity. And just like that, she's able to go ahead and send it off to all the suppliers and change her workload from a matter of weeks to a matter of minutes. Does that make sense, Juan, or any other questions with that?
So yeah, so okay, so I just want to go back because it's quite simplified, right? And I don't want to kind of bypass the fact that Sheila has been doing this work for a very long time, right? And so she has a lot of experience to say, okay, here's my women-owned suppliers, and that didn't go away, right? That's still part of the job that she has to do. But information, there's a component around the data, gathering the data and organizing it in such a way that then a set of models and generative AI are able to combine that information in the context of what she's looking for. So everything that she had to do either manually or just think about, or maybe the risk scores maybe she had to calculate herself or get from someone else, these things are sort of organized before it gets to the point of her saying, okay, I'm going to do an RFI, and now a suggested email gets provided to her, which every second counts when you're Sheila.
Definitely. And you brought up a good point too. The risk score might be created by a totally different group within Sheila's company. You know, it might be the analysts or someone else in charge of that. So that'd be just another person that you have to contact. And I mean, even just us preparing for this presentation, it's not instant whenever you're trying to contact someone. It always takes a day or two. That's just how the corporate world works. So it always just takes time, and that's like precious time that Sheila could be talking with the suppliers and her clients instead.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is when we think about employee productivity, right? And we think about someone like Sheila with a lot of experience. You were talking earlier about, I think you mentioned earlier that many companies are suffering from shortage in team members and resources. To hire someone and get someone to the level of Sheila is very expensive or difficult to do. It takes time. But if we're able to find a way to empower Sheila so she can either take care of more of these requests and not have to drink coffee by the gallon, or even we talked about us coming in there, we wouldn't really have a clue on what Sheila does, right? It would be a big learning curve for us. But perhaps more junior people could come in and provide the scalability that Sheila needs with this type of approach.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been actually seeing a lot of those I have recently of kind of needing to upskill some employees and using generative AI to do that instead so that it kind of takes away from that onboarding process as much. And it helps the person applying and the new hire as well as the company so that Sheila doesn't have to train the next person.
Terrific. Now, as we so thank you for walking us through this, Emily. I start thinking about there's a lot of considerations that go into doing something like this, right? And
Absolutely.
one of the first pieces of it is when we think about artificial intelligence and how to apply it to our business, is where's the value? How do we determine a value-based strategy? How do we identify things that are going to be of value to ourselves internally, to our customers, and how do we make all of this happen? Right? That looked great, but in a very short period of time, we talked about data, we talked about trusting that data, we talked about the interactions and all that knowledge required. How do you make all of that happen? How do you put that factory together with a level of confidence that what you get on the other side is going to be correct? So important things to consider, but there's more.
Absolutely. And kind of to bring back what you were saying earlier, I heard someone use this quote the other day, which really resonated with me, and I'm going to try to use it more often. But it's not just to be an AI user, but to be an AI creator. So rather than just kind of using AI to help you with your job, maybe something that's already implemented on the market right now, really to kind of be able to be in the creator position for that, be able to know what's going into your models, being able to have control of the data that's going into it. Let's say like if Sheila was using a different generative AI that she wasn't in charge of and wasn't in control of, how does she know those suppliers are even reliable? How does she know those risk scores are what the company needs? And that really can weigh on the reputation of the company. We've been seeing that a lot with just a lot of different things in the marketplace with different ones on the market right now, because you really don't know where the information's coming from unless you're in charge of it. And the foundational models for companies that are being trained on your own data is really your greatest asset right now, because it's really what you were saying earlier, Juan, all yours, and it's your creativity that's going into it, and that's going to make it different for your company versus everyone else in your industry. So making sure that you manage the risk that goes into that and your reputation. And also, as you're scaling your company, if you're training it on some bad data or data that you don't know, and you continue to scale up, let's say you have like only 60% accuracy, as you scale, that's only going to go down. So now Sheila's reaching out to suppliers that are not good for their company and might even cause them more trouble in the future. And on top of that, all of the increasing and growing regulations within AI and within everyone's industry. This is really important right now because they're really expanding as we speak every day. They're just adding more and more, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. And it's really hard for companies to stay on top of all of those in addition to their company that they're running. So it's a lot to deal with, but it's really important to consider before really leaping into any generative AI products, because you never know, it could all just be swept out from under you. That's why you need to be in the driver's seat of these kind of operations and getting this started within your own company.
And that's such an important point, because of course there is the reputation side, and making sure that you are able to trust what goes into your processes that are leveraging AI, what comes out of them as a result. But because there is such momentum around artificial intelligence, there are and they will continue to be. I think we can't underestimate the number of companies that are going to just pop up left and right, providing AI services. And we need to, I think, really think about those and how those may align with our own objectives, our own value as a company, and make sure that they're not an app for an iPhone that then sort of disappears on you, or doesn't actually take care of your data the way that you would take care of your data. So now, as we talk about it, right, so it starts to get a little bit overwhelming, because we're talking about data, governing it. We're talking about like being able to trust it, and there's this black boxes. How do I know that what's going in and what's coming out, it's good? How do we make sense of all of that and bring it all together?
Yeah, definitely. And not even to mention the fact of it's going so fast, everyone needs to jump on it right now, but also slow down. You need to make sure you have all these things in place. It's very overwhelming. It can seem overwhelming to some, but the good news is we do kind of have this partnership right now as well, and we have a lot of ways to address this. This is kind of the approach that I've been taking with some of my clients, to make sure that we do address each of these things individually. So it's a 3-step process that we've broken down at IBM that we have been able to kind of address each of these issues. First of all is kind of building and deploying these AI apps. So a lot of people don't have a large development team or a bunch of data scientists on their team. So we're kind of making a new way to approach exploring these different models and tuning them based off how you want the tone, how you want the voice, how you want your responses. So we have this low code environment so that business users, designers, marketing, HR, whoever really, like, your skill set really varies with it, which is a great thing since we're talking about a lot of creativity. So anyone's really able to use it and start to learn how each of these models work. Our platform uses a bunch of open source models, so we're not locked into just any IBM model. We use a lot of different ones from across the market, so you're able to kind of choose what works best for you, what's best with your business values. Because we're not just building this AI just to do one little task, we're trying to help your entire company. So we need to think a little bit larger than that and keep an open scale and not lock into any one particular vendor, cloud, which is also another important thing. So you don't have to change really your technology environment. We're meeting you wherever you are right now. So being able to kind of experiment and create these models, kind of learn about them as you're doing it, and not really needing as big of a technical team to do so. And the next kind of part of that after the models itself is this data that we've been talking about this whole time, and making sure you know what data you want to use for your company and making sure it's trusted. So IBM does have some models of our own, as well as we use a lot of open source models, just kind of depending on what you want to choose. But we want to make sure that you know exactly what data is being into your entire enterprise, entire your AI systems. Because like we were saying with the explainability, if there's some of your data that's bad data or faulty or just wrong or not correct, and you try to scale up your company, it's only going to grow and become everywhere in your company. So making sure that you know what data is being handpicked into your solution, and then also governing your entire AI lifecycle. I mean, not only to cyber attacks and risks, but also to bias and drift. There's a lot of this within data science models in general, kind of leaning towards one way based off history, because a lot of it's trained on like historical stuff. So it really kind of, you need to make sure that it's just exactly how your company wants the regulations, make sure there's no bias, make sure you can explain where the answers are coming from when the model gives you this answer, to make sure we're protecting the reputation of each company that we work with.
I think the points that you're making about being able to understand the full life cycle are so important, because I remember not long ago where we were very resistant of black boxes, right? And we didn't really want to interact so much with black boxes. But we've arrived at a world where we're talking about black apartment buildings in a way, right? So these are really large, and there are things that are not easily understood. But being able to understand the inputs and the outputs, and being able to continuously monitor that and understand the outputs, and that the outputs still represent our values, that is so very important. I do have a question though. So IBM works with NASA, right, and many other companies, but I'm just using one of my favorite companies or institutions as an example. They work with NASA, and so NASA is a little bit bigger than some of our organizations, and AI is for all. But I'm a little curious. The company that works for NASA and does this, really advanced computations, and they're using generative AI for figuring out weather patterns with them, many other things. How do I make sense of that for a company that is scaling up? Because that's what we were talking about also today. We were talking about scaling up, Sheila. So how do I make sense of that?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually, of course, work with all of the Fortune 500 companies, but we go down to as small as 25 employee boutique law firms, with different examples. So we really work with everyone from startups to tenured companies to mom and pop shops. It's really just kind of across the board. And like you and I were talking about, Juan, the other day, another approach that we've been taking with our models is we want to make them a little bit smaller so that everyone can afford and have the correct amount of data for each of their needs. So we really want to make it customized based off each customer. So for this example we had a boutique law firm that we worked with recently who was only about 25 employees, so a lot less than NASA. They needed some help kind of going through all of their documents. They noticed a lot of their employees' time was being taken up kind of reading through these legal documents, extracting important details, cleaning them up to be ingested by whatever programs they use on their side. So we were able to kind of come up with a solution for them that was able to ingest all of their documents, read them, summarize them, and kind of pull out these key points, which was really successful for them. They were really happy with it. And that was just one kind of example of how we can work with all size of companies. And then the one on the right that I've also provided was just of a different startup to kind of show you that it really doesn't matter where you're at within your own company. Our mission is always to kind of meet you where you are in your technical landscape rather than have you come meet us, because that's always a little unrealistic for companies to change everything. We just need to change kind of from where you are. So it's really not an issue of size. It's really just how much you want to kind of change your company and be able to come up with these creative ideas. Like we were saying earlier, I think most of the value is kind of meeting with our team and us learning from you more than you learning from us hearing what your problems are, where your challenges are, and kind of how we can make your company different within your field.
Yeah, and that's a critical point that leads us to wrapping up and what we wanted to offer to everyone who's joined us today. We understand that it can be a little overwhelming, all this information that we're taking in, but we want to highlight that your context your intellectual property, your understanding of your business is the key to success with generative AI. And in order to get started, what IBM and MicroStrategies wants to offer to you is a deep dive, a conversation between our experts and your team to be able to explore some of the potential use cases. I love the way you said it, Emily. We'd come in and learn from you, really understand what is it that makes you tick, what are the things that you want to accomplish with generative AI, and for us to be able to help you align those things into capabilities that we know how to develop and how to deliver, and show you a way to get to that where you are. Not, if you are the size of NASA, that's fine. But if you're looking for ways to scale up, our team is very excited to meet with you and do these deep dives and figure out how to get started. So we will be reaching out to you. So maybe if we're lucky enough, Emily and myself get to sit with you and go through these. I do see, however, that Kelly has joined us again. I don't know if that means I'm in trouble or something else.
It means we've come to the Q&A part of today's session. So just real quick, for those of you who may have just joined, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A so that we can kind of go through those quickly with Emily and Juan before we wrap up. We did have a few questions come in. So the first one is, how long on average has it taken to teach the AI bot before it is ready for deployment?
It really kind of depends. I know that's probably not the answer you were looking for, but it depends how much or what we're doing. If it's something simple like that law firm use case that we were talking about, where you're just extracting the details, we can teach the model to do it rather quickly within a few weeks. When it comes to deployment, that will kind of depend on your systems and how it's integrated, but it really doesn't take too long for the model itself to learn. What I've been seeing that kind of takes the longest is really kind of figuring out the actual after part of that and integrating it into your system and figuring out kind of how the terms and contracts and everything. So it's really not the technical side of it as much as really just the business interactions.
And I think there's another critical point, which is that we need to start from the understanding that the bot is already trained. What we're doing is we're tuning the bots to your tone, your experience, the things that you want to use as the knowledge base. But there is a large part of training that it is the large language models that is already done for us. We just have to fine tune it to your context.
Thank you. And the other question that came in is, can the chatbot notify people when something is pending on their list, or is it only once they open the bot?
Absolutely. That was just that example. And I'm glad someone asked that, because that's kind of thinking about your own environment. We have a lot of even just pre-made solutions right now that will email your employees, message them on Slack, whatever you use in your company. But absolutely, that's an option.
Awesome. Well, Juan, Emily, thank you so much for your time today. I know we all appreciate it, and we look forward to connecting in the future. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.